Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to A Funky Wednesday. It's Wednesday, not Tuesday for a change. Thank you so much if you've been able to join me this afternoon, because I wasn't able to do my broadcast yesterday. So we've switched things around and I'm joining you today instead. And I really wanted to get into the studio this week because we've got a brilliant new collection to share with you, and I wanted to take you through all the products that I'm really excited about and hope that you'll be too. So here we are on How to Craft Network, and hopefully you're all familiar with the fantastic How to Craft Network and the studio, and that you like and subscribe already. But certainly do keep an eye out for all the new broadcasts that come out on a regular basis. I come into the studio from Funky Fossil twice a month, and the first show I typically do at the beginning of the month. I share with you new product that I want to have a play with, and then in my second show of the month, we do a bit of a craft along, have a bit of a workshop and explore those products in a bit more detail. So keep an eye out for that as well. So what I'll do first and foremost, before I say hello to all the lovely people that I can see are in the feed, and B, start having a bit of a play and a demo time, is just take you through what's in store for you from Funky Fossil for October. So the first, and this whole collection is called Home, and it's a kind of it's a bit of a funky take on Nordic, Scandi style imagery, and I am a real kind of home bird. I love kind of home and everything to do with kind of cozy days, autumn and winter. And I wanted to bring a collection that really kind of spoke to that, and that's what we've got. Hopefully, we've got for you today. You'll see how that inspiration has come through into the products. And so our first little bundle is a kind of a die set, which has got a collection of small, kind of very stylized, simple house shapes, quite geometric really, with little hearts and stars and things kind of cut out details coming out of them. So you can see there's also a word die as well in there, which says home, with a heart in the home. And that's, I mean, I found this really versatile. I've used it masses in lots of cards, and you'll see as well, I've used it in things like tags and other kind of designs too. And there's also a little A7, it's really dinky. It's a little A7 stamp set, also called Home, with that same imagery running through it. Now, the stamps and the dies aren't sized to fit together because I felt that the stamps were really a very easy shape to put out. So I wanted to give you as much variety of scaling of the houses as I could. So you'll find that the house stamps, whilst they echo the dies, are also a slightly different sizing to them. And then the third item in this bundle, and pretty much I think in terms of pricing, it's effectively a free item with these products, is the Large House Aperture Stencil. And it looks very, very simple. Well, it is very simple, as you can see, but there's so much you can do with this aperture, and it's really sparked my creativity. So hopefully I'll be showing you lots of ways you can use that. And with the stencil as well comes the mask. So obviously you've got the opportunity to work around that kind of iconic house image silhouette, or you can work into it, and it gives you the options to do both. So that product number is 100577, and you can see for those three items, just $18.99 for How to Craft Network. So, and of course, even less so if you remember. So it's a really great bundle in itself. And we've tried to scale the size of the bundles down so that you can do pick and mix of the items that you really like, but equally there is a shop to show option as well, because hopefully you'll see how well they all work together. So the second item on the counter that I just want to talk to you about are 4 stencils, and they're 4 for the price of 3, and these are really kind of 4 Scandi style stencil designs, so quite, in some respects, quite generic. They're very simple, but they're perfect for backgrounds, for texture. They don't fight with your focal point, basically. And you can see immediately how kind of Scandi inspired they are with the knitting. The knitting. It's down here. The knitting pattern. I'm not going to point at anything. I'm going to put my hands behind my back. You can see the knitting pattern. And then you can see the Nordic star as well, that kind of a classic Scandi design. You can see on the top row there, you can see the stems, or the Scandi vines, as I've called them, which are really quite a popular design on the kind of high street at the moment. And then in the neighbourhood is this set of this stencil with the kind of houses, again, echoing the designs from the stamps and dies. So these are a set of stencils that I've been using repeatedly with the stamps and dies, and I think they'll go well with them. And we've got a 4 for the price of 3 offer for you today as well. So it's only $14.25 and less, under £14 if you're a club member. So fantastic value for 4 stencils. And the item number for that is 100578. And let's move on now to what I think are absolutely stunning papers. Now, I'm not going to do a pick and flick here, but when I get over to the pod, to the other pod where I do my demos, I'll show you them on overhead. But it's a beautiful wintry set of papers which have got this kind of blues and kind of wood tones, the kind of white wood that I know we all love. Along with some real kind of pops of warm reds in there. It's a beautiful set. I can't emphasize that enough. And of course, it's got a wintry feel. It doesn't necessarily have a Christmas feel. And you can see the damasks and other designs in there, the wood grain, which aren't particularly festive. You can use any time of the year. And along with this 8x8 paper pad, you also get a set of enamel dots. And I'm just throwing those in as a bonus with that paper, because I've had them made to fit the palette of the papers, so I wanted to ensure you could get both of those. That's $9.99 for both of those together, and I just think it's a paper pad that you will just absolutely love. And then on the counter as well, we've got another die. Now I know that our tree line dies from September last month were really popular, and this die, Country View, is very much in that same style. So you'll see that the trees and the artwork in this die will echo that tree line die set if you got that already. Beautiful kind of modern style. It gives you a ready-made scene into your card, but of course, those of you that are experienced die cutters, you'll immediately see there's lots of snippability here. You can take the trees out, you can only have the front hill, you can use it as in a whole plethora of ways. So definitely a great versatile addition. And of course, any season, just change up your colours and you can be spring, summer, autumn or winter. So that die set, that die alone, it's a single die. I think it measures about 14 centimetres in terms of the width of the die. So you can see it will give you a great card front in itself. And that single die is $11.39 if you're in the club, and it's $100,580. And then finally, and it wouldn't be me if I didn't bring a little bit of cheeky MDF to the Handcraft Network. And what I've got here is called a kind of village trio. Now, I bought a larger village. I did some shows on Create and Craft not long ago, and I bought a larger village set to that. But equally, I'm conscious not everybody wants to do a larger project, and sometimes people are a bit new to MDF as well as a project that they're going to decorate. So what we've got here is a mini version of that larger village with just 3 houses in and a base, and it's so simple. You literally are just going to slot the house shapes, the solid shapes into the base, and you can do that. You can do that in whatever kind of formulation you want on the base. All the slots are the same size, so you can have different houses at the front and back depending on what you want to do. So they're super easy shapes to decorate, paint, paper, and then some lovely kind of sweet little touches like the little outline frames, like the hearts and things that enable you to add your own kind of spin on them as well and customize them a little bit. And you can just see just from this little one I've got on the counter here, I've used the white magic papers on them. I've used the Scandi, the knitted pattern stencil on the base. So you can use all of the things that we've just been looking at on the counter to make something that will be a lovely bit of home decor. And it doesn't need to be a Christmas piece either. I'll show you when I go over to the other pod. I've done one which is a much more kind of contemporary look and colours. So that is $5.99 for that set of MDF, or $5.69 if you're in the club, with an item number of 100581. That's everything I've got on the counter for you. You can see, as I always like to do, dies, stencils, stamps, papers, everything to enable you to go in any number of directions that you might want to. And of course, there is a whole shop the show option as well, with a fantastic saving on. If you think, I've already done a 4 for 3 on the stencils, I've already put a stencil in the first bundle for nothing, I've added the enamel dots, all those savings roll in to the final shop the show price, and then that's discounted even further. So the full price would be £74.19, but we're offering at £54.99. And if you're a club member, just £52.24, which I think for everything we've seen will give you many, many hours of crafting enjoyment. And that is 100576. So shop the show is an option for you as well if you've liked everything as you've gone down the counter. But equally, lots of flexibility here for you. And as you see me do demos, there may be particular things that speak to you, and they're the things that you want liked out of what we've got to offer. So hopefully you're enjoying Home as the collection for October. And I've got a couple of demos to share with you today. But let's get over to the counter so I can say some hellos and see who's joined me this afternoon. Oh, got up onto my step. It's so funny, I have to just step up. But Tim sometimes says to me, so you stood up? I'm like, yeah, this is it. This is as tall as I get. So let me say some hellos, because I love to see who's joined me. And also, I do want to thank you as well for all the lovely comments on Facebook yesterday when I said I wasn't feeling well. I really did appreciate you all jumping on to wish me well. And I am back on form today, so hopefully I'll be able to kind of share what I've got from a demo perspective. So we've got Carol Ann. I'm sure I saw you say, Carol Ann, you've got cake and a cuppa ready for the show, so I feel very jealous of you. Mary, Maureen, Roxy Lee as well. Good to see you. Laxmabai. I'm sorry if I didn't say that right, but hello, lovely to see you. I'm glad you like the collection. And Maureen, and I'm fairly sure I saw Laura as well, who I think is on holiday. So if you're tuning in, thank you very much, Laura. And also, I did see, before we went live, I did see Pearly Wings come on and say hello. So if you're still there, Adam and Simon, then lovely to see you. Thanks for joining me this afternoon. So as you know, I like to watch the feed as I'm demoing and talking. So any questions that you have, or any kind of comments or feedback, then I'll be keeping an eye out to see what it is you've got to say. So before I do a demo, I do want to just take you through this White Magic paper pad, because it is lush. It really is lovely. And I thought, as you can tell from me not being able to work out which stencil I'm pointing at, I thought I'll not manage to pick and flick. But I thought if we could go to the overhead, then hopefully you'll be able to see how gorgeous these papers are. So this is 8x8, and you can see they've got beautiful kind of texture and dimensions. So you've got something very neutral and generic, like your kind of your wood grain here, which would be a background for anything. But then equally, you've got papers with the floral elements, and there's texture in here. You've got something like this snowy paper as well, with the this music in here. There's the snowflakes and just that lovely kind of scratchy blue, distressed blue background. Another one here, again, snowflakes, but almost kind of like clouds and snow in there. So really subtle colours, but a beautiful palette to work with. And I think this is probably one of my favourite papers from the pad, with, again, these florals. There's text in here. There's cuttability. For those of you who like doing your fussy cutting, you can take elements out of these papers and certainly work with those. And then there's this beautiful paper as well with the deer on, which I've used as a focal point on some of my cards. Again, a snowy scene. So you've got things that if you're a journaler or memory books, you've got a ready-made frame there for things that you might want to use as your focal point. There's book text with kind of almost like gesso over. And then you've got some damasks, which again give you your neutral backgrounds. So hopefully you can see how versatile this paper pad is. But I did want to just do a flick through, because I'm not very good at doing justice to papers if I'm trying to hold them up. And this, of course, is probably my favourite paper of the whole pad, because it's got that real kind of wood grain effect to it, really beautiful, rich white wood. And I think I've seen many of you say that you like that kind of wood grain paper. You can never have too much of it, can you, really? So hopefully White Magic is a paper pad that you can see fitting into your Christmas card making, but equally any time of the year. So definitely want to pop in your basket if another paper pad's what you're fancying today. But for my first, let me put this to one side. For my first demo, if I go straight into demo, oh, I'm glad you like the papers, everyone. Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm going to be at Port Sunlight, so Adam and Simon are just saying they're going to see me there, and hopefully we'll be seeing some of you there as well on Saturday at Port Sunlight. Got your tickets ready to go. I need to get back and get organised for that yet. So, sorry, I've distracted myself again, haven't I? So the first demo I want to do, I want to actually go with some really warm colours, because you can see from the kind of the White Magic paper pad and that Scandi feel, you kind of immediately at this time of year start to think about those wintry colours. But actually I want to show you how you can make something really bright and colourful with it too. So what I've got here on my piece of white card taped down is the large house aperture, the single house aperture that was in that first bundle with the dies and the stamps. And I'm going to use some of Tony's gorgeous new inks, which I'm sure lots of you have got already. And I'm trying out this mat as well, this non-moving mat, because of course for somebody like me using stencils and brushes all the time, this is just an absolute godsend. So I'm using the yellow colour, the sherbet, and this is a really bright, vibrant yellow. And I'm just going to add some blending into a large house aperture. No, I really personally, I love working into aperture stencils and using that almost to give me a focal point on my card. So something like this kind of house shape, it's a bit unusual, different from a circle or a kind of heart. And I just thought it gives a really nice fun element to your card front. So I'm going to add this yellow, and I'm being quite tentative with how much I'm picking up on my brush, because as you will know already, these are very juicy ink pads, which is fabulous for stenciling with. And certainly my brushes, I mean, you can see here, this brush I've been using, I think it's with the Bittersweet. You can see how juicy that ink pad is in terms of how much ink the brush is picking up. So definitely get a feel for a new ink pad like this, and kind of start off the card on the mylar of your stencil, and you can pull it in as you want. I'm going to go dark around the edge, and yeah, I know you love those inks, Adam and Simon. I've seen your stamped out samples with them. They are gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Lovely for blending, as you can see here. So I'm leaving a little bit of shade differentiation in terms of being slightly lighter in the middle. And it's just, again, it's about adding a bit of interest. Otherwise, you could do a flat colour, a block of colour, and that would be equally fine. But I quite like with an aperture stencil to have the stronger colours at the edge of the design. And what I'm going to do now is go in with the knitting pattern, or the knitted background stencil, which I must admit is one of my go-to stencils. I absolutely love this one. Just again, a bit of fun, adds lovely texture. If you use texture paste with it, then it's perfect for that, in relation to giving you some really kind of cool effects on your designs. But I'm just going to ink. So I've left the house aperture in place, and I'm going to ink over the top with the knitting pattern. So you can see the hinge there, and I'm able to go straight in. And I'm going to use a bit of variation of colours over the top. So I've got my yellow as the base, and I'm going to use the magenta now. I'm starting from the bottom here. As you can see, my stencil is not a clean stencil, but I think it's had acrylic paint on it, so none of that's going to contaminate into the actual design itself. And I'm pressing a bit more firmly with this. My tape hasn't stopped. I'm pressing in a bit more firmly with this because obviously the stencil, or the brush, sorry, is working through two stencils to get to the card. So you just want to ensure you're making good contact with your base. And work our way up, and then let's have some of that beautiful bittersweet, kind of a very rich orangey colour. I'm using my big brushes for this, and brushes again you can find here on How to Craft Network. Because this is a big aperture, I'm not looking to pick out any specific details, and these big brushes are picking up lots of ink and giving me good coverage straight away. And let's just get these two colours meeting in the middle. There we go. Let's see how that looks. You can see there how there's a kind of bit of a variation of colours that goes through. What I'm going to do as well, and I've did this in the one that I had prepared earlier, but I'm going to go in with a bit of indigo at the bottom just to give it a little bit more punch and a bit more depth of colour. So this is a very easy stencil to align. It's a very regular pattern, so you can just pop it back over, and let's add a bit of indigo in there at the bottom. I've also got very non-sticky tape today, I don't know why. I couldn't see any magnets, otherwise I'd be magnetising my stencil down. Have you all got your mats, your glass mats from the recent birthday event? Right. Okay, so we're just going to go in at the bottom here with the indigo, rich purple. And just add a bit of depth in terms of the colour gradation. Big word, isn't it, for Wednesday afternoon? And add a bit of pink, just to soften that blend. And there we go. Now I've moved that stencil slightly, so you'll see there's a slight hazing there, which actually can be a really fantastic effect. If you do that with two different colours and get a drop shadow, I really love that, but it's not quite what I was going for on this occasion. But I do have one I've done earlier, so we'll be able to resume business as we go. You can see there that was going to give you already a lovely kind of focal point on your card. You've got that kind of warmth of colour there and the pattern just contained. What I want to do now is cover over this stenciled image and then work around it. So this is where the mask comes into play, that comes with that large house aperture. Because what I want to do is add some of the in the neighbourhood houses in the background in grey, and they'll kind of, what I want to do is that home is the kind of the place in the foreground. It's the kind of the place where we've got that all that that kind of warmth going on, and the streets of houses behind it are just going to be offering a bit of context, a bit of background interest. So I'm going to use some hickory smoke, I think. Distress oxide here. And shall I live dangerously? I don't know. I'm not feeling like I'm up to living dangerously today, so I am going to just tape this. You could use some stencil spray on the back of a mask like this to hold it in place while you're working over the top, or kind of double-sided adhesive. I'm just going to tape that down so I don't get it moving around on me. I haven't got that many hands today. So a bit of grey in the background. And I love this street of houses. I just think it's really, really cool. You'll see there's lots of samples as we have a look at them during the show, with these as in kind of a rainbow of colours. And it's a really effective stencil in its own right. And what I'm doing here as well is just being conscious that this stencil isn't going to go all the way across this card front in one go. So I'm thinking about where I end in order to be able to pick up again on the other side of the house. So it makes it look like it's one seamless stencil, but actually we've just extended it, working around the mask. There we go. Oh, thank you, Denise. I'm glad you like it. Oh, Maureen, yes, I know that you're coming to Portsmouth. I have seen you saying, good, I'm glad you'll be coming and saying hello to everyone. It's just going to be so nice to put faces to names as well. It's a lovely show. I appreciate you can't all get there, but... Right, so we've got that grey now, that background grey going across the back of the card. So it should bring out our house now to the foreground. It's not quite so stark, working against a plain background. So it's a way of creating a layer on your card without necessarily... What I could have done equally well is I could have stenciled this, cut it out and stuck it on top. So again, that's another option. But I wanted to create something which was actually all kind of giving you a flat, seamless card front. And the reason for that is what I did in prepping for this is I actually then went round the aperture with a craft knife, left this end here, this edge in the card, but cut the rest out. So we've got a doorway now. We've got a front for our card. A bit like when Tony's here and doing lots of flaps and interesting interactive things in journals. I thought this would be a nice way of adding it to a card front. So what I want to do is now create some interest behind our doorway, our house. So this will be going on to the front of a 5x7 card and opening up. So now I need to add something behind here to make it worth opening. And I'm not going to do all of this. I'm just going to take a few of the colours, do a bit of blending across the back, but I do have one that I've already blended that will give us a background to work with. You can see, even just as it goes onto the mat here, how much ink we've got to play with. So all I'm going to do is create kind of almost a hazy rainbow effect across the back of the card. A lot of it won't be seen, but you'll have a nice border around the outside of your focal panel. And you'll then also have that colour showing up behind your aperture. So this is the magenta. Again, working off the mat and pulling that colour down. You can see, even though these are really vibrant inks and juicy pads, you can get a nice soft blend with them. Just keep that sweep of your hand quite loose, not too much pressure. And you'll find you get those kind of colours just merging beautifully. So this is kind of where these kind of big blending brushes come into their own, because they're going to give you that coverage really quickly. So if I jump to one that I have done earlier, because I'm sure you don't need to see me doing a lot of ink blending, you can see how I've just used exactly those same colours, the same colours as we've used in our house, in our focal point house, and I've just blended across the front there. So we've got something that's going to kind of really make the card pop. And then on the front of the card, or on the front of the house, what I'm going to do is adhere this home sentiment. So this is from the die set that we saw at the beginning of the show. So with all the little houses, there's this word home. And all I've done is die cut it 3 or 4 times out a black card, adhered those layers together, and then used just clear embossing ink to give them a glaze. So they're almost a bit like they're kind of enamelled. Something I'm sure lots of you have done regularly. Have you got Tony's new stamp pads, Denise? Have they arrived with you yet? Who watched her on HSN as well? Amazing, amazing job. Right, so this is just going to go and, oh, do you know what I've done? Lift that up quickly before it adheres. What I want to do actually is I've die cut a heart and blended yellow, the same yellow around the edge of it, but left the centre fairly pale. And the reason I did that is when I was looking at this at home and I was putting the die cut word on, I thought the background was a little bit busy and I was losing my sentiment. So just as I stuck it down, then I was just thinking, oh yeah, that looks like it's going to get a bit lost. This is always a really quick option if you've got a pattern that you think's going to fight with your focal point, or your wording is going to get lost, then just to add a little touch, another layer on top, and then I think this will help our word pop a lot more clearly. You can let me know whether you think that was a good move. Yeah, she does need an hour, doesn't she, Denise? Because she's got so many things to share. Yeah, it is perfect, Caroline, for new home cards. I can see me using this a lot for that. Now, what I want to do is I want to stamp the sentiment from the mini stamp set behind this aperture. And what this stamp set says is, home is the nicest word there is, which I just love. That's what I feel about home. I'm definitely a home bird. So what I'm going to do to get the placement right on this is I'm going to put all of it into my Eureka so that I can position the stamp where I want it before I lift up the top layer, so I know I've got the placement right. So let's just slide that in. This is coming together super easily. Put some magnets on the bottom layer. And what I'm going to do, this sentiment I think is too long to really get right. Well, you could just about squeeze it in actually. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to mask off there is and just leave it with home is the nicest word. If that makes sense. So I'm positioning it so that I think that will show up okay. Let's sort that through. There we go. And we can pick that up, and then we can mask the bit of the sentiment that we don't actually want to ink. Let's see, there it is, just the end there. We can add our ink. And again, this is another, I'm sure we'll customise our sentiments. Just get that end of that word. If they're too long for your space, you can either stamp them out separately and cut them into different strips and use them that way, or as I've just done, just mask off a little bit of the sentiment so you're not. Let's put a home. Let's put a home on top of that as well. I know we've got home on the front, but we've got a different type, different font of home as well in the stamp set. So if we do that, that'll look nice, I think, behind our doorway. And what I love about the Eureka as well is, however small the stamp, I mean, these aren't big stamps as you can see, but you can still use them without worrying about kind of getting uneven pressure. Perfect. So now when we put our house over the top of our blended background, now you could, of course, adhere this focal panel over the top with 3D foam pads, etc. But I'm literally just going to adhere it down here because I think with that door opening, you don't want too much for it to be too wobbly. That makes sense. So we can adhere that, and we're going to have a sentiment inside. And I think we should have one of the little die-cut houses as well. And one of the reasons for me putting this kind of collection together was having that house icon in a whole range of sizes. So you've got, your large house here with the aperture stencil, right down to some dinky little houses in the dies and stamps. So it just gives you the opportunity for, making tags or adding things to a project, which are just little accents, and work well, hopefully, with the rest of your stash. So you'll see here, I've managed to avoid putting any adhesive on the back of that flap, because obviously that would be a bit of a self-defeating exercise. But it's the kind of thing I typically do, to be fair. Been known to happen. So let's put this all down. And also what I like about this, you can see, so this background panel is sized to fit on the front of an A5 card. But it just gives you that real kind of glow of colour behind the kind of grey outer. So I think it just really just pull it all together, having so nice to be able to customise your own papers or card blanks to match perfectly with your design. Oh, thanks, Caroline. Right, let's get this on the front. And then I did say I'd add a little house inside, a dinky little house inside, didn't I? So I've got a whole tin of dinky little houses because once I started die cutting, I just could not stop. And I think if we go with black for this particular, because then it will pop, won't it, against the, it'll pop against the colours we've got there. So it'll be like a silhouette. And we'll just pop that above. I've got that there. So you've almost got a card within a card in relation to, and I have actually made cards just with this aperture stencil. So I'll kind of cut around it and made really dinky little note-look cards. But here I've actually incorporated it into a much bigger design. And hopefully, if I just hold that the front, you can see what a lovely effect we have there with those rich colours, that knitted pattern, just giving you that suggestion of kind of coziness of home, but then equally just something to kind of get people to open up and look into. So, I tell you what I also want to show you. You know, I was saying about different scales of houses I was ridiculously pleased with this. Oh, this will work on my glass, on the mat, won't it? I've used that same aperture stencil that coming up on screen, and I used it on shrink plastic. So I made a little magnet with it by stenciling on the Scandivines design onto some white shrink plastic, shrinking it down in the oven, and then just popping a magnet on the back. How cute is that? So if you were wanting to give somebody a new home gift, you could make them either a little key ring or a magnet and have that echoing through the card as well. I just thought I'd show you how that scales down into the shrink plastic as well. I was ridiculously pleased with that. I did squeal. Right, so let me do a bit of a tidy up and get on to a next demo with much more of a wintry vibe. We can have a bit of a kind of a longer look at some of the samples and beautiful designs that the design team have made with this home collection. See just all and the rainbow, you know, I just think the rainbow houses. There's one there with a snow globe as well. So you really do have all of the seasons covered with this collection, depending on how you want to go, kind of modern and graphic, like that one with the black home and the rainbow of houses, or much more Nordic. And I just think this is I found it a really versatile collection to work with, possibly as well because the scaling is so cute. It just gives you that scope to do little things from noteless right up to bigger projects. So we've got there the country view die, which I've used the same technique I think we did in one of our earlier shows on the workshop, where we've added glitter behind the trees, with paper pieced in with the Mellow Moments paper pad to create the fields. You know, really simple to do, but that, you know, it's a summer day, isn't it? So my next demo is going to really kind of be celebrating paper pad, the White Magic paper pad, because I think it is just, yeah, you can tell, can't you? You can tell that I've fallen in love with this paper pad. And I'm going to do something very simple and quick here, but I want to show how the country view die, I keep saying die set, it's a single die, works beautifully in terms of using these background papers to layer up. So what I've done already is I've picked two of the papers out of the pad. I've used that kind of blue one with the wintry feel, with the snowflakes and the music, subtle kind of music and in it too. And I've also got the one that also looks like a kind of a winter storm with those snowflakes kind of coming out of the blues and whites. So I'm going to adhere this base piece down to my card front, which I've already added some blue card to. I'm going to adhere my base piece down, and then we'll build up from there to show how the country view die and just a little pop of red will really kind of make this kind of design come together. And there's one thing I do like is just using a single pop or a little pop of colour on a card to so something that would normally be monochrome. Actually, you just add one little bit of contrast, and it's just really eye-catching. So we've got that as our base. And what I've done ahead of time is, as you can see, I've die cut the country view scene out of the blue paper. And for this, on this occasion, I've got the actual die cut at home, but what I wanted was the aperture that gave me. So I've got my aperture here, which will enable me to build up my scene within it. So I've then die cut the country view scene separately out of white cardstock. So I've got that line out there. And we're going to add some embossing to this to give it some real texture. Now, what I'm going to want to do as well, so I'm thinking ahead here, is I'm going to want to add one of our little houses on the hilltop. But what I don't want is for my little house to appear underneath the line like that. So what I'm going to do is, I've got a pencil here, but let me just use a bit of white gel pen, it will do the job, is I'm just, while it's all in situ, I'm just going to draw a line so I know how I want to trim my house so it's working with that, with the line of that die. And also what you'll see I've done with this die cut house, is I have backed it with some white card so that the star and the doorway aren't going to show the blue behind. It's kind of a solid image. Really, obviously, very, very simple to do. So if I cut this, it should now look like it's going to kind of sit in the scene nicely. Now, if you're going to paper piece and put different pattern papers into these apertures, you could slot your house behind it. But as I'm not doing that on this occasion, I wanted to ensure it didn't kind of hang underneath the line art. So let me just adhere this top layer down. I know you're all making good progress with your Christmas card making. I have to admit, I'm not. I'll get there eventually. By putting this aperture over the patterned paper, I'm really, I'm letting the pattern papers do all the work for me without doing the paper piecing bit. Now, as we saw with that card with the sun rays, you can go back in and add different papers into these fields. I haven't attempted the trees, but the fields are quite large pieces. But on this occasion, I want the kind of scene to have a bit more dimension. And I'm going to very quickly, again, this is another of those occasions where I could have cut this out with some sticky back on. I always think of that after the event. And when I was putting this die together, I've left the kind of the straight line, almost kind of the bottom half of a frame there for you, but it's very easy to snip away. So if you don't want this kind of solid outer edge for your scene, I'll show you in a second, and you just want the trees and the fields to kind of be an element on their own without this line, then that is really easy to do. You can just really snip along those edges. And equally, as you'll see, some of the trees on this image are kind of self-contained. So you could snip away these two trees, for example, and have them as a separate embellishment somewhere else on your card to tie it together. So again, there are lots of ways of using this. Let's adhere our little house This is where I was saying that, just that little bit of red. You've only made 2 Christmas cards, Maureen. Oh, I feel better now that you say that. This will be one of mine. I'll make this one of mine, so I'm one up. So you can see how nice that will be now that it's sitting in the scene and following the curve of the hill. And what I've got here now, just again to give ourselves some dimension, this looks like it could be a little bit flat. There's not a huge amount of contrast between the white of the die cut and the background paper. But if we add some further layers to it, you immediately start to get that scene coming forward. You get a bit of a natural shadow there. And before we do that, let's add just a little bit of embossing powder to the top of this this die cut element, and then that will give us even more dimension and texture. I'm just having a think. Do you know what I think I'll use to do this? I think I'll use so I can be quite specific. Is I'm going to use some of this. It's the Wow Embossing Ink, but it's in a brush format. I'm sure some of you will have seen this already. It's inspired by Seth Apter, but it's again a great alternative. They do the pen, don't they? And they've got all these different ways of applying the embossing ink. But this gives you the opportunity almost to kind of paint with it. Make sure, however, if you do paint with it, that you use pretty much an old scruffy brush that you're not worried about spoiling. You can wash it, but I wouldn't necessarily think it's gonna kind of come out of it brilliantly. So I'm going to just add, and the reason I'm using a brush and the embossing ink in this format is I don't really want to cover the whole of this overlay in embossing powder. So almost kind of by painting it on like this, I can be really specific about where I put it. I'm just going to put it on these. But say, if you've got a pen, that will also do the job for you as well. I just quite like the fact that this gives me the opportunity to be almost quite heavy-handed, actually. So I can get quite a lot of powder to adhere because it goes on a bit more heavily. Let's see what we get there. I don't know if you've seen that before. It's been around for a little while, but I'm not sure that everyone's aware of it. I'm just going to fold up this a mini bit of cardstock, living dangerously, just to catch some of this embossing powder. And we'll go with Sparkling Snow. Seems like an apt name. Now, I say you could, with this, just go in and cover the whole design, press it into your ink pad or cover it with your embossing ink and just get the whole thing covered solidly. But I know now that if I kind of throw embossing powder at this, it's only going to catch in those areas where I've added the ink. Just another way of adding our sparkle. Oh, I haven't seen the rollerball one, Caroline. I'll look into that one. I say there are lots of ways, different ways. Well, I've said that. I'm not sure I've got my heat. It's here. It's here. My heat gone out. This is going to be really subtle because it's white on white. But the fact that you've layered up the die cuts. Things like that. the fact that you've layered up your die cuts and then you're adding a little bit more sparkle, actually it's going to just really kind of make the scene look a little bit more vibrant. I don't know to the extent to which we'll be able to catch that sparkle. It might be a bit of a challenge with the white on white. Well, when we hold it up to camera at the end, we'll see how much that captures. And of course, you can go back in and add more layers and more dimension with your little brush and your embossing powders. It's just another way of applying it. And it lasts forever. Well, not technically ever. Probably not allowed to say that, am I? Right, so I'm attaching this again with my bead gluing. You can see how this comes together. Yes, yeah, kind of the embossing ink in that format, Denise. It is an unusual one. Certainly when I'm doing kind of MDF, for example, if I'm decorating MDF, it's a great way of painting that embossing ink around the edges of items. And if you want to create a rusty effect, you can be very specific about how you add it, maybe to cogs or to frames, without trying to maneuver an ink pad to do it. So yeah, it's definitely worth looking at if you've not seen it before. So hopefully here, by having now 3 die cuts together and the top layer having a bit of embossing on, it's really starting to pop out the card. And what I've got here is I'm back with my home die cut. And all I've done to on this occasion is the heart that is integral to the word. I've just cut separately out of red and then taken the heart out of it. And I've taken one of the teeny little parts out of one of the house die cuts in the middle of that to create that almost kind of like heart in a heart thing. But again, you know, use the waste, use those little bits. And these houses have got loads of lovely little hearts and stars that just kind of a spare confetti that come out of the die cut. So you can use them for further embellishments. We'll put that there. And I just out of another stamp set that I happen to have in my stash, I've got the words for Christmas. So we'll have home for Christmas. And that nice snowy scene. So yeah, from the sun rays of that earlier sample that we saw to the kind of the much more wintry and festive look here, you can see just those 2 little pops of red with the house and the heart, just kind of bring a little bit of extra dimension to the design in those cool blues. So that is 2 cards. I'm just going to reach over for my other one, and hopefully, what my aim today with the demos was to show you 2 very kind of contrasting looks. One very kind of rich in colour and vibrant colours, and the other one in much more kind of wintry Nordic vibe. And again, what have we used today? We've used some of the stencils. We've used a couple of the Scandi stencils. We've used the dies. We've used the stamps for the sentiment in here in our large home aperture. So all of those things, and the papers, of course, all of those things mixing and matching, I think, beautifully together to combine to create those projects. So I hope that you can see that there's lots of potential for the way that you might work with this and incorporate it in your stash. And if, like Maureen, you've only made 2 Christmas cards, then maybe this is the set to go for to get some quick Christmas card making done in the next few weeks. But I think whichever bits of the bundle you buy, if you buy the whole show, you'll find elements in there that will give you lots of versatility and lots of fun. So I'm going to leave you with that, with the home bundle for today. I'll be back again, I think it's the 18th of October, to do a bit more of a craft along, and I'll share some projects ahead of time to show you what we're going to be making in that hour. And if you've got any of the elements between now and then, you'll be able to join me and do some making at the same time. But in the meantime, thank you so much for your company. Thank you for joining me on this Funky Wednesday, and I shall see you again later this month. Bye for now.